Hello everybody, it's me, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and this is my series Nails in a Coffin, where we learn that with great kills, there must also come great nails. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're on our final stop on our trip through Texas with 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie was released on Netflix last month and acts as a direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, ignoring all other films in the franchise. We started this journey 8 weeks ago, and we have nailed a lot of victims. So here's a summary of the average Nails in a Coffin ratings for all the movies I've covered in this franchise. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average Nails in a Coffin rating of 1.4. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 had an average of 1.8 nails. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 had an average of 1.2 nails. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation had an average of 1.7 nails in a coffin. The remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.9 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning had an average of 2.1 nails. Texas Chainsaw 3D had an average of 1.2 nails. And Leatherface had an average of 1.5 nails in the coffin. One more thing before we start, if you can do me a favor, check out all the other videos on my channel. Like I've stated, I have covered all the other films in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, as well as Child Play franchise and Scream as well, and other films. So please do me a favor and check them out. And if you don't mind, hit that like button down below, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And it would really help me if you would subscribe to this channel. I put a video out every Friday. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I appreciate you taking this journey along with me. Well, without wasting any more time on our final trip through Texas, let's put some nails in the coffin for 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We open the movie with narration by John Larroquette. He's doing the voiceover for a DVD that is covering the events that took place 50 years ago in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They kind of try and give you a vibe of unsolved mysteries, and as much as I love John Larroquette, he really is no Robert Stack. But I do love hearing John Larroquette's voice in the opening of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. He did the original and he did the remake, and he does a really good job setting the tone for these films.
In the summer of 1973, 5 youths were attacked in a grisly and gruesome fashion by an unidentified madman.
There is a bit of retconning in this part with John Larroquette's narration. They never mention all the other family members that, helped commit all these murders back 50 years ago. And they kind of insinuate that Leatherface committed all these murders. A small group of entrepreneurs, Dante, his girlfriend Ruth, Melody, and her sister Lila, are on their way to a small town in Harlow, Texas. They had purchased this town, and their plan is to auction off all the properties so they can gentrify the area. While they're on their way to Harlow, they stop at a gas station to fill up, and Mel sees a man with a gun on his hip driving a pickup truck, playing metal music, when he stops to fill up his tank. And she starts making rude comments that, oh my God, this type of guy really must have a small penis. Comments that this guy 100% hears. So we learn right away that Mel is very pretentious and very unlikable.
Who has such a small dick they need to walk around in public with a fucking gun?
While they're inspecting the buildings, they see an old tattered Confederate flag hanging outside the orphanage. Dante and Mel go inside the orphanage to try and remove it, only to find it's still occupied by an elderly woman, Ginny. And Ginny is played by Alice Krige, who also played the mom in Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. Ginny tells Dante and Mel that she still owns the property, but Dante and Mel are really rude and abrasive towards her, not hearing anything that she has to say. Dante gets upset and he goes to get the cops to try and remove Ginny. Mel and Ginny are arguing at the bottom of the staircase, only to be briefly interrupted by Leatherface, who's standing on top of the stairs. The sheriff and deputy show up to escort Ginny off the property, and Ginny gets so upset and worked up that she vomits and has a heart attack. And it's the sheriff and the deputy who have to take Ginny in their van to the hospital. Ruth, Dante's girlfriend, goes along for the ride, because as this is happening, a bus full of investors show up, and Dante and Mel have to be there to greet the investors. Leatherface helps carry Ginny into the van, and he goes along with them, and he is pissed. During all this commotion, Lila meets the local mechanic / contractor, Richter, And we found out that this was the man that Mel was being an asshole to earlier on at the gas station. While on the way to the hospital, Leatherface is holding Ginny in his lap, and Ginny is telling Leatherface to be a good boy and stay out of her room. We'll find out why later. Ginny passes away shortly thereafter, and Leatherface is really upset. He's getting really worked up. He's trying to, turn the oxygen tank on to try and get Ginny oxygen, but it's too late. The deputy, grabs Leather's hand to try and tell him, hey, she's gone, but Leatherface is too pissed and upset right now. He grabs the deputy's arm, breaks it viciously with the bone sticking out of his arm, and then he kills the deputy by stabbing him in the neck with his own broken arm. At 18 minutes in, we have our first death in the movie, and I'm going to give the deputy 2 nails in the coffin. When the sheriff and the deputy came to, escort Ginny off the property, they only were responding to a call Dante made saying that she was trespassing. They saw she wasn't well, and they did try and rush her to the hospital. But she died along the way, and Leatherface, who's this big, giant man, freaked out. The deputy even tried to help Leatherface, but he broke his arm, and he was killed by having his own bones stabbed into his neck. And the deputy, once Leatherface broke his arm, he did try and get his gun out, so I do think he deserves at least 2 nails in the coffin. The deputy took his gun out once his arm was broken to try and get a shot off, but Leatherface grabbed his other arm with the gun in it and slammed it into the roof of the van. This caused the gun to go off, and it wound up shotting the sheriff through the neck who was driving the van, and the van went off the road, crashing into a large piece of farm equipment in a field. After the crash, Ruth comes to, and she looks in her side mirror only to see Leatherface cutting off Ginny's face. She uses the radio to try and call for help, as Leatherface dons Ginny's face as his mask for this movie. The sheriff wasn't quite dead yet, so Leatherface takes Ginny's oxygen mask and bashes him in the head a few times, making sure the sheriff is dead for good. At 26 minutes in, the sheriff is now dead, and I'm giving him 2 nails in the coffin. He tried to help Ginny. He didn't know what was going on in the back seat since he couldn't see. He couldn't stop, not fully knowing Ginny was dead because he was trying to get her to the hospital. He was shot in the neck and then beaten to death, so there really wasn't much he could have done. So I think he easily is going to deserve at least 2 nails in the coffin. While Leatherface was finishing off the sheriff, Ruth was trying to hold still, hoping Leatherface would think that she was dead and leave. When Ruth no longer saw Leatherface in any of the mirrors, she tried to climb outside the driver's side window since her door was jammed in the crash, but Leatherface appears at her window on the passenger side, breaks the window, grabs Ruth by the throat, and then guts her with the shard of metal, killing her. At 27 minutes in, Ruth was killed, and I'm also going to give her 2 nails in the coffin. She tried to call for help on the radio, and somebody did hear her. And she also tried to remain motionless as possible to avoid Leatherface seeing that she was still alive. And I just didn't see anything that she did that was blatantly stupid. She really didn't make any poor decisions. So I think she firmly deserves 2 nails in the coffin. After we see Leatherface kill Ruth, we see a shot of the field and Leatherface pops his head up. Not sure if this was intended to be funny, but it did get a good chuckle out of probably most people who watched it. After the quick little pop-up, we see Leatherface. He starts to walk back to town as a storm approaches, which I will admit was a nice little touch of foreshadowing. Dante and Mel realize they don't have the deed to the orphanage in their files, so they both go inside the house to look for it to see if Ginny did in fact have it. Well, we all know that she did. Also, while this is happening, Sally Hardesty, our final girl from the original film, she actually hears the distress call that Ruth made on the radio, and she gears up to go face her attacker. Mel finds the deed to the house in Ginny's room, and Dante is downstairs in the kitchen also looking around while Leatherface arrives, and Dante sees Leatherface's reflection in a pot. He turns around, is attacked by Leatherface with a meat cleaver. Mel goes downstairs and she sees Dante lying on the floor bleeding. She runs back upstairs and she starts hiding under the bed in Ginny's room. Well, Leatherface goes into Ginny's room and he's taking a sledgehammer to the wall where he gets his chainsaw that's been sitting there for 50 years. It's now storming outside. Richter is there, and he sees Dante stumbling out of the orphanage holding his face. Richter runs over to go try and help him. He's holding Dante's hand. His face is all mutilated, but unfortunately for Dante, he succumbs to his injuries and dies. At 40 minutes in, Dante is dead, and I'm going to give him 2 nails in a coffin. All this really started because of his attitude and rudeness towards Ginny. I was going to give him 1 nail, but he did try and get himself some help, having half of his face cleaved off, and for me, that earned some extra points. Dante didn't deserve to die at all, but I do think Dante does deserve 2 nails in the coffin. Richter goes inside the orphanage with his sidearm right after he tells the woman leading the investor group to go lock themselves inside the bus and call the cops. Now, either she didn't hear call the cops or she doesn't tell all the people inside the bus to call the cops, because we're going to see later, their phones are all working, getting a signal, but nobody called the cops. Mel is still hiding under the bed while Richter is about to walk into Ginny's room, and Leatherface is hiding behind a door. Mel kind of moves the mirror with her foot to show Richter that Leatherface is hiding, but they still wind up getting into a fight. Richter and Leatherface. Leatherface breaks Richter's leg viciously with the sledgehammer, bending it back completely the wrong way. But even after this happens, Richter is still trying to fight Leatherface. They get pushed into the window and the glass breaks. Leatherface grabs Richter's head and slams it to the side of the window, and the glass, goes into Richter's head, and Richter falls down to the floor. But before Leatherface finishes him off with multiple sledgehammer shots to the head, Richter sees that Mel is hiding under the bed, and before he dies, he takes the keys out of his pocket, holds them in his hand, and shows them to Mel, so at least she knows now that Richter has the keys so they can go get help. So Richter even didn't give up that Mel was hiding under the bed by throwing her the keys or anything like that, so Richter really did last until the last second trying to help people. He's my favorite character in this movie, which doesn't say much because most of the characters are very unlikable. But Richter, he's dead now, and I'm going to give him 4 nails in a coffin. I was really on the fence with this one. I was having a problem deciding 3 or 4 nails, but I'm giving Richter 4 nails in a coffin. He had his leg broken viciously by Leatherface with a sledgehammer. It's broken so bad that it was bent back the other way, and he was still trying to fight Leatherface. He had his head slammed into a shard of glass, which went into his neck. He was bleeding out and falling to the floor. He knew he was about to die. He saw Mel hiding under the bed, and he knew enough to get the keys out of his pocket and show them to Mel. Now, he didn't toss her the keys because that would have given away her position. So he knew to show her, hey, here are the keys, go get yourselves to safety, right before Leatherface bashes his head in multiple times with a sledgehammer. I thought Richter was one tough SOB, and I was going back and forth or 3 or 4 nails. And when I compare him to all the other characters in the movie, I really do think he deserves a solid 4 nails in the coffin. After that 4 nail kill, trust me, it's all downhill from here. A short while later, Lily and Mel, they're able to get out of the orphanage with Leatherface quickly in tow. They're running, it's raining outside, they make it onto the tour bus, but before they even get out of the house, there is a funny part where Mel gets a bunch of sewage poured on top of her head. Mel and Lily get on the bus, they give the bus driver the keys, and they start to drive off. But before they can fully get away, Leatherface shows up, and he's able to stop the bus. I think he used his chainsaw to saw through the tires, and the bus comes to a stop. The bus driver gets out to see what happened, and he gets his head, decapitated off screen. We didn't see it happen, so we're not going to rate the bus driver's death. After the bus driver is decapitated, Leatherface makes it on the bus, and the CGI blood flows. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And let's face it, if you're watching my video, you have seen this part. It's a big slaughter. And the internet tells me there were actually 22 people on this bus. And after watching this scene a couple of times, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of how many people are on it. And I'm giving every single person on this bus who died 1 nail in the coffin. No one could figure out how to get a window open or anything. Nobody called the cops. And we all know that they had signals because you see, chats going back and forth. Everybody thinking it was staged and it was fake. I don't see how no one could get the window open or do anything but scream and die. And the woman who's even leading the investor group, after everybody is slaughtered, boop, she opens the window and tries to climb out, but she's cut in half by Leatherface with his chainsaw. Everybody on this bus was stupid, and I think all of you are going to agree with me here. All 22 of them are each getting one nail in the coffin. While this bus massacre was going on, Mel and Lily were able to lock themselves in the bathroom. And after Leatherface kills everybody in this bus, he's using his chainsaw. He's starting to saw through the door to the bathroom. Mel and Lily are able to escape through a vent that was in the ceiling, and they climb out of the bus. And they're running down the road to only be picked up by Sally Hardesty in her Jeep. Sally locks them in her Jeep while she grabs her shotgun and goes to find Leatherface. Sally, who supposedly is a Texas Ranger, has her shotgun, and she finds Leatherface in the orphanage, in his room, sitting on the bed with his back to her. She has her shotgun, it's loaded and ready to go. Does she shoot him? No. Does she let him stand up? Yes. Does she shoot him? No. This is what she does.
Say my name.
And then she lets Leatherface pick up his chainsaw and slowly walk out of the room while she is just standing there. Leatherface makes it outside, and he's trying to get inside the Jeep where Mel and Lily are locked in. He breaks the window, and he's trying to get at them. Sally shows back up, and she's able to just wing Leatherface with her shotgun, but she does waste a lot of time talking instead of just putting multiple shots into him. Leatherface is able to run off. Sally takes her keys and gives them to the girls, saying, hey, get in the Jeep and get the hell out of here. Sally chases Leatherface to a dark alleyway, and she has her shotgun up at the ready. Leatherface charges her, coming out of the darkness, and Sally's only able to get 1 or 2 shots off as she kind of just clips him. And again, Sally's supposed to be a Texas Ranger. Leatherface is able to grab the shotgun by the barrel, so Sally can't chamber the next round. Sally takes her knife and stabs Leather once or twice, but Leatherface is able to take his chainsaw, which is still running, and pushes it all the way through Sally. He then lifts Sally up over his head and tosses her into a large pile of trash. Mel and Lily were in Sally's Jeep the entire time, not driving away. Right as Leatherface tosses Sally in the pile of trash, Mel tries to run him over with the Jeep, but he throws his chainsaw at them. It bounces off the windshield. Mel swerves very violently to the side, and instead of hitting Leatherface, she crashes into a building and crashes into a wall. After the crash, Mel is stuck in the Jeep. She has got a piece of metal in her leg. She tells Lily to just go. Lily makes a run for it. Leatherface shows up at the Jeep, and he's about to kill Mel, but Lily shows up with the rifle that she has no idea how to use, and Leatherface takes chase. They're running down the road. Mel falls down to the ground, and Leatherface is about to kill her with his chainsaw. But Sally, she's not dead yet. She's able to hit Leatherface with a shot from her shotgun, and he runs into this old, broken down movie theater. Sally gives her shotgun to Lily and tells her,
Don't run. If you run, he'll never stop haunting you.
And then she passes away. This is an easy one for me. Sorry, Sally, you're getting one nail in the coffin. You had multiple opportunities to shoot and kill Leatherface, but you wasted time with Say My Name and all this other bullcrap, and you just had too many chances to shoot him, but you didn't take the shot. You even watched him slowly walk away with his chainsaw while you were standing there with in the orphanage. So, sorry, Sally, you definitely are going to get one nail in the coffin. Lily takes a shotgun, and she's going to go hunt Leatherface. Now, this is the final climax fight between Lily and Mel versus Leatherface. It's a very paint-by-the-numbers ending of a slasher. During all this struggle in the basement of the theater, Leatherface poses with his chainsaw over his head as he's about to kill Mel, but Lily shows up with the shotgun, and she shoots him a couple of times until she runs out of ammo. And all these shots knock Leatherface over this large puddle and until she runs out of ammo. And this reminds me of a much better movie, but I can't quite think of it. Well, after the shotgun is empty, Mel appears, and she gives Leatherface an uppercut with his chainsaw, and he falls back into this large puddle or well that was in the bottom of the basement, and they both leave. It's all of a sudden morning, and then Mel and Lily get inside their car and hit autopilot to go home. Not go get medical attention or anything like that, since they both probably have concussions, internal bleeding, lots of loss of blood. No, let's hit autopilot and slowly drive home. Well, in one of the funnier scenes in the movie, as they're driving away, Leatherface appears at Mel's window, breaks it, pulls her out, And as Lily is standing up through the sunroof, looking back as the car is slowly driving away, Leatherface takes his chainsaw and decapitates Mel. The movie ends with Lily screaming as the car is driving away, trying to, replicate the ending of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Leatherface is dancing in the street with his chainsaw and Mel's head. There's even a post-credit scene all the way at the end where we see Leatherface walking back to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre house. At the very end of the movie, we have our final death, and it is Mel. And I'm definitely going to give Mel one nail in the coffin. They were driving away slowly after everything they've been through, not trying to go to a hospital, but hey, let's slowly drive away because it's an automatic car and go home. It's got nothing to do with her being unlikable. That's not, what the Nails are about. It's based on the stupid decisions, and the decisions she made in this movie led to her death. So she is 100% for a final nail in the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Mel is getting one nail in the coffin. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all my nail in the coffin ratings for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Here's a summary of all the nails I have awarded. The deputy had 2 nails in the coffin. The sheriff, also 2 nails in the coffin. Ruth, I gave her 2 nails. Dante, he had his face cleaved off, but he's still trying to get some help. He's going to get 2 nails in the coffin. Richter, my favorite character in the entire movie, got 4 nails in the coffin. All 22 people on that bus each had 1 nail in the coffin apiece. Sally made too many stupid decisions. She had multiple opportunities to kill Leatherface, but she didn't take them. She's getting 1 nail in the coffin. And most recently, our last kill in the movie in the entire franchise, Mel, is getting 1 nail in the coffin. This gives us an average nails in the coffin rating for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 with 1.2 nails. Now, here's a summary of all the movies in the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise and their average nail in the coffin ratings. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.4 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 had an average of 1.8 nails. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 had an average of 1.2 nails. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation had an average of 1.7 nails in the coffin. The remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre had an average of 1.9 nails in the coffin. Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning had an average of 2.1 nails. Texas Chainsaw 3D had an average of 1.2 nails. Leatherface had an average of 1.5 nails in the coffin. And we just found out that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 had an average of 1.2 nails in the coffin. Stay tuned for next week's episode where I'm going to recap all of the nail in the coffin averages for each of the films. As you can see, there are 3 movies with an average of 1.2 nails because I average it to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to break that down a little further so next week we can find out in the entire franchise which movie has the lowest nails in the coffin average. I'm also going to discuss my favorite 1 nail, 2 nail, 3 nail, and 4 nail kills in the entire franchise. Next week, I'm also going to give you the percentage of chainsaw kills for each movie, as well as the overall percentage of chainsaw kills for the entire franchise. Take a guess and let me know in the comments below on what you think the percentage is going to be. Thank you for checking out this video, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, hit that like button down below and leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear it. And if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it, again, if you would hit that subscribe button. Like I said, I put a video out every Friday. I'm having a lot of fun. I had a blast with this franchise. And next week's episode should be a lot of fun as well. As always, I'm your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete. And remember, with great kills, there must also come great nails.